The phone buzzed just after midnight, pulling Emma Brooks out of a half-sleep. The screen lit up with a name she had learned to associate with safety and rent receipts: Daniel Harper. For a moment, she stared at it, heart beating too fast for such a simple thing. She didn't open the message right away. She knew that once she did, something would change. When she finally read it, the words were calm and polite. He asked if they could talk the next day about the apartment. Nothing more. No reason given. Emma lay back on her pillow and stared at the ceiling, listening to the low hum of traffic outside. She told herself not to panic, but panic had already arrived. In a new town with no family nearby and a bank account that never seemed to rest, the apartment was more than a place to live. It was her restart. Emma had moved to this small Washington town 8 months earlier, right after the divorce papers were signed. She had left behind a marriage that ended quietly, without shouting, but with a deep kind of sadness that stayed in the body long after words were gone. She chose this town because it felt neutral, not happy, not painful, just quiet, enough to breathe. The apartment above the bakery was old, but cared for. The floors creaked, the windows rattled in the wind, but the mornings smelled like bread and coffee. Emma liked that. It reminded her that people were waking up, that life was moving forward even when she felt stuck. She barely slept that night. By morning, her thoughts were tangled with worst-case ideas. Maybe the building was being sold. Maybe the rent was going up. Maybe she would have to pack again. Daniel met her in the courtyard just after lunch. He was already there, leaning against the low brick wall, hands in his pockets. He looked the same as always. Clean jacket, simple shirt, calm face. Daniel Harper didn't look like someone who enjoyed delivering bad news. They exchanged polite greetings. He asked how work was going. She answered honestly but briefly. Emma noticed he seemed careful, like he didn't want to rush her. Finally, he explained. He told her he was planning slow renovations to the building. Nothing sudden. Nothing that would force tenants out. He wanted to improve things without changing the heart of the place. Emma felt her shoulders relax a little. Then he paused, looking at the ground for a moment before meeting her eyes again. He said he had an idea. He said she worked remotely and had an organized way about her. He said he could use help with emails, scheduling repairs, and small tasks. In exchange, he could lower her rent. The words landed softly, but stayed heavy. Emma didn't answer right away. She asked questions. How many hours? What kind of tasks? What if she got too busy? Daniel answered clearly. No pressure. No long hours. Everything flexible. He made it sound simple, almost obvious. But Emma felt something else underneath the offer. Not danger, not manipulation. Closeness. A door opening into a space she hadn't planned to enter. She asked for time to think. Daniel nodded, understanding. He said there was no rush. That evening, Emma walked through town instead of going straight home. The streets were damp from earlier rain, lights reflecting on the pavement. She passed couples walking dogs, friends laughing outside cafes, people who seemed settled, felt like a visitor in her own life. At home, she opened her laptop and checked her finances again. The numbers were clear. The offer would help more than she wanted to admit. It would give her breathing room. It would give her time. But money wasn't the only thing she was thinking about. Daniel had always been kind. When her heater broke in December, he fixed it the same day. When a package was stolen, he helped her file a report. He never crossed lines, never lingered too long. Yet today, when he spoke, she felt seen in a way she hadn't felt since before her marriage ended. That scared her more than the idea of change. The rain returned that night, tapping against her windows like quiet questions. Emma sat at the small kitchen table, a mug of tea cooling in her hands. She told herself she was overthinking. It was a job, a practical choice. Nothing more. The next morning, she sent Daniel a short message. She accepted. Things moved fast after that. Daniel gave her access to the building's email account and showed her the small office on the ground floor. It smelled faintly of dust and old paper, but sunlight streamed in through a wide window. Emma liked the space right away. It felt useful. They set a routine, 2 or 3 evenings a week, sometimes mornings, whatever worked. Emma answered emails, scheduled plumbers, kept records. Daniel trusted her quickly, which made her work harder. The pace of life changed. For the first time since the divorce, Emma felt needed. Not emotionally, but practically. Her days had structure. Her mind stayed busy, and then there were the conversations. At first, they were short and light. Comments about weather, about difficult tenants, about the bakery downstairs. Then, one evening, while waiting for a file to upload, Daniel asked what she liked to read. Emma told him about novels she loved, stories about second chances and quiet courage. Daniel listened closely, said he used to read more before life got complicated. She understood that without him explaining further. Another time he asked why she moved there. She gave a simple answer: fresh start. He didn't push. Weeks passed, and the office began to feel familiar. Safe, too safe. Emma noticed small things. How Daniel always waited for her to finish speaking. How he remembered details she forgot she had shared. How his voice softened when he said her name. She also noticed herself. How she checked the time waiting for their meetings. How silence felt heavier when he wasn't around. How she dressed a little more carefully without meaning to. She told herself it was nothing. Humans connected. That was normal. One evening, a power outage forced them to stop working early. They sat in the dark office, lit only by the glow of phones and the streetlight outside. Daniel joked about old buildings and bad wiring. Emma laughed, surprised by how easy it felt. In that quiet, she felt something shift, a warmth, a pull. She went home that night with her thoughts racing. She reminded herself of the rules she had lived by since the divorce. Keep things simple. Keep boundaries clear. Don't mix safety with feelings. The problem was, she wasn't sure where the line was anymore. Daniel never said or did anything wrong. That made it harder. If there had been pressure or a clear intention, she could have stepped back. Instead, everything stayed just inside what felt acceptable until it did. One afternoon, Emma overheard a tenant complaining about rent. Later, Daniel asked her opinion. She gave it honestly, suggesting a compromise. The next day, Daniel told her he followed her advice. "You have good judgment," he said, "and trust you." The words stayed with her long after he left. Emma began to feel responsible in ways she hadn't expected. Responsible for the building, for Daniel's decisions, for the space they shared. She didn't like how heavy that felt. She started sleeping. Less thinking, more. Wondering if accepting the offer had changed the balance of her life in ways she couldn't undo. The realization came quietly. Without drama, she was standing at her window one evening, watching the lights in the courtyard. Below, Daniel walked across the space, phone to his ear, laughing at something she couldn't hear. The sound reached her anyway. Emma felt a sharp, sudden ache. Not jealousy, not desire exactly, just awareness. She understood then that the offer had given her more than help. It had given her attachment, and she wasn't sure she was ready for. As night settled over the building, Emma closed the curtains and leaned her back against the wall. She had wanted stability. She had wanted relief. Instead, she had stepped into something fragile and undefined. Downstairs, the office light turned off. Emma stood alone in the dark, wondering if she had made the right choice, or if the cost had only just begun to reveal itself. The change did not come with a loud moment or a clear sign. It arrived slowly, hidden inside normal days. Emma kept working, kept answering emails, kept smiling when she saw Daniel. From the outside, nothing was wrong. Inside, everything felt tight. She began to notice how often her thoughts returned to him when she was alone. Not in a hopeful way, but in a careful one. She measured her words before speaking. She wondered how things sounded. She asked herself questions she had promised never to ask again after her divorce. What does this mean? Where is this going? What happens if it ends? The work itself became heavier. Every small decision felt personal. If a tenant complained, Emma worried about how Daniel would see her response. She made a mistake. She replayed it in her head all night. The apartment that once felt like a quiet shelter now felt connected to her job, her choices, and her emotions. One evening, Daniel asked if she could stay late to finish reviewing contracts. The office was quiet, the building nearly empty. Emma agreed, though she already felt tired. They worked quickly, the pace sharp and focused. When they finished, neither stood up right away. Daniel thanked her. Not the usual polite thanks, but something deeper. He said he couldn't have managed the renovations without her. He said she had changed the way he looked at the building, at responsibility, at people. Emma felt the room shrink. He wasn't confessing love. He wasn't asking for anything. But the weight of his words pressed against her chest. She nodded, unsure what to say. Silence filled the space between them, thick and full of meaning. That night, Emma walked home faster than usual. She locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. She told herself she was imagining things. She told herself she was sensitive because of her past. Still, sleep didn't come easily. The next weeks moved faster. Emails increased. Tenants argued. Contractors canceled. Emma handled it all, but the strain showed. She skipped meals. She answered messages late at night. Daniel noticed. He asked if she was okay. Really okay? Emma said yes. The word felt weak. One afternoon, Daniel invited her to grab coffee after work. He said it casually, like it was nothing. Emma hesitated for only a second before agreeing. That second mattered more than she knew. The cafe was quiet. They sat by the window. Sunlight caught the steam rising from their cups. The talk started light but drifted deeper. Daniel spoke about his failed marriage, about how he focused on work because it was easier than facing loneliness. Emma listened, feeling pieces of herself respond. Then he looked at her and said, "Working with her had reminded him what connection felt like." The words landed gently. But they changed everything. Emma did not pull away. She did not lean in. She simply sat there, heart loud in her ears. Okay. She saw clearly in that moment what she had avoided admitting. This was no longer safe ground. It was a place where one step could lead to another, and then another, until there was no clean way back. She went home shaken. The regret started to form then, sharp and clear. Not regret for feelings. Feelings were human. The regret was for the situation she had allowed herself to enter. For mixing need with emotion. For letting comfort blur into attachment. She tried to fix it quietly. She shortened meetings. She kept conversations professional. She stopped sharing personal details. Daniel noticed the distance but did not comment. That silence hurt more than words. One evening, Daniel asked to speak privately. They met in the office. The door stayed open. The lights were bright. Everything was proper. Daniel spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. He said he sensed a shift. He said he didn't want her to feel uncomfortable. Then he told her the truth. He said his feelings had grown beyond what he expected. He said he respected her too much to act on them without honesty. He said he would understand if she needed space. He did not move closer. He did not reach for her. His restraint made the moment heavier. Emma felt tears rise, not from fear, but from conflict. Part of her felt seen. Another part felt cornered by circumstances she helped create. She realized that even kindness could become a burden when mixed with power and proximity. She told him she needed to step back, that she couldn't continue working for him, that she needed her life to feel simple again. Daniel listened. His face showed disappointment, but also respect. He agreed without argument. He thanked her again, this time with sadness in his voice. The work ended the next week. Emma packed her things from the office quickly. She left the building account, the files, the keys. The space felt smaller without purpose. When she returned to her apartment, the silence felt strange. Days passed. Then weeks. Emma adjusted to the change slowly. Money was tighter, but her thoughts were clearer. She woke without checking her phone. She cooked again. She read at night. She felt like herself. Though something lingered. Sometimes she saw Daniel in the courtyard. Their greetings were brief, polite, careful. The space between them felt wide but charged, filled with words they would never say. Emma learned something important during that time. Regret did not always mean a mistake. Sometimes it meant growth, arrived through discomfort. She had crossed a line not because she was careless, but because she was human. She did not blame Daniel. She did not blame herself. She accepted the lesson quietly. One morning she decided to move, not out of fear, but clarity. She needed a place that belonged only to her again. When she told Daniel, he nodded, understanding more than she said aloud. On her last day in the apartment, Emma stood by the window one final time. The bakery below was busy. The town felt alive. She felt ready. As she carried her last box downstairs, Daniel was there. They shared a brief goodbye. No promises, no regrets spoken aloud. Just mutual respect and a soft sadness. Emma walked away, knowing one truth. Some choices teach us who we are by showing us who we are not ready to be yet. And sometimes, the deepest regret is also the moment we finally choose ourselves.